Hey guys, happy Friday. Today means nail audit day, which is always super fun, as I've said in every single other video I think I've uploaded on here. But I really do love nail audits. It's really fun to kind of be Sherlock Holmes and try and figure out what's going on with your guys' troubleshooting situations and answer some of these questions that I don't think really get answered very often. So I hope you all are really enjoying all of this content. And I wanted to start off today by saying that I really would appreciate your guys' words out there on all the social platforms. If you want to share your experience about what Nail Hub TV is like, what you're getting out of it, that's really helpful to me because a lot of people, this is something new for them and they're all looking for help. They just don't really understand what the resources are that are available to them. So if you guys want to share, out there, talk to people, word of mouth is very powerful. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys are here with me, but I also know that there's a lot of other people that should be here too. So if you guys want to share that loud and proud out on social, that will really help me be able to find those people that are looking for this exact kind of education. Today's nail audit is brought to us by Tracy. So thank you, Tracy, for submitting this request. It's a very good one. And it's also extremely relevant this week in particular because today, as I'm filming this video for you, I'm looking back at the course that we're doing over gel nail overlays, which you guys should have seen a new video come through on Wednesday for that course. Today's video is talking about how we can use product to manipulate the shape and structure of the actual nail. And Tracy is dealing with a very particular issue that is super relevant to what I'm covering in my gel overlay course, as well as what we're going to go over in today's nail audit. So Tracy submitted this to me. She said, crooked and twisted nail, that's what she's dealing with. My ring fingers are slightly curved towards my middle finger, twisted and a little trapezoidal. The longer my natural nail grows, the more noticeable it is. Should I just chop it off and do an extension, live with the natural look, or are there tips, tricks to make a structured overlay look straighter and sleeker? This isn't my dominant hand, and it took a lot of effort sculpting and filing using the sandwich method to get to this, and I used the off-center glitter ombre to camouflage. I used all Light Elegance products: Tack, Clear Extreme for the safety layer, P+ Lazy Day Lavender, Clear One Step for Apex Structure, Radiant Glitter, and Super Shiny. All right, cool. So let's dig into Tracy's video here. Okay, so let me just let you guys watch this real quick, and then we'll play it one more time and I'll pause it. So Tracy's just trying to demonstrate how her nails look from the top as well as looking at them from down from the free edge. And let me play this back one more time. So right here, I can see what Tracy's talking about with how they kind of have a trapezoidal shape. They're a little wide on one side and then kind of get flat on the top and then come back down. And if I stop right here, you can also see what she's talking about with that kind of twisting where it looks like everything's kind of going downward on that right-hand side. But you can see that this inner corner goes outward instead of inward. And so this is kind of that twisting that, we've talked about this before with natural nails twisting. Ski jump nails are an example of twisting nails where they actually grow upward. But there's also these kind of twisting factors that we deal with any type of natural nail. So natural nails, because they are built up of these layers of keratin protein, depending on how those layers are structured, we can actually get, sometimes it's invisible with short nails, but as the nail grows longer and longer and longer, whether it be the effects of just a lot more material being placed on one side of the nail plate as it's formed, or also just things that we do in our daily life that kind of start to morph that nail into a different shape, a lot of these things all start to play a factor. So one of the examples I want to bring up is our pointer fingers are usually very crooked. And our nails are usually very crooked on these fingers in particular. They'll usually shift from one side to the other. And so I want to talk about today how we can combat that kind of angle as it comes out of the finger. But what can also happen is we can also have this twisting that happens as we're looking at the nails this way, right? So we have this kind of thing if we're looking at it from the top and the way it comes out of the finger, if we're like holding our nails like this, okay, my finger kind of goes this way, then that way, and then the nail wants to go a different direction. But if we look at our nails like this, we can also see that sometimes our nails curve to one side or the other, and as they get longer, they can twist. This can also happen when we actually extend the nails with artificial product. If our forms are not properly curved, we can create a twisted nail shape as we're extending. And also in Tracy's situation, her natural nail is kind of causing this twisting. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do to help prevent this twisting as well as fix it with our product. Okay, so let's use my hand as an example real quick. I actually broke one of my nails, so I just filed it down. So sorry, it's a little shorter than the other guys. If we look at my hand, my pointer finger, and usually everyone's pointer finger is probably the most crooked finger on their hand. Actually, I'd really love to research the reason why. If any of you guys know why the pointer finger is usually the one that struggles staying straight, it'd be really interesting to find out. But most people's pointer fingers are usually the most crooked. So what we want to do when we have any kind of nail that has crookedness from looking at it from the top, okay? And I want to start here because it's important to take both of these angles into consideration. So if we have our nail here, and we have our finger, okay? And then, you know, we have our knuckle here, first knuckle, and then down here, we have the knuckle that's on our hand, right? This main knuckle. Now, I'm not a physician, so I don't know all the medical terminology for this, but I'm just going to describe it in a very layman's way today. So ideally, we want the nail, even if it's artificial, to look like it is lined up with this knuckle. Okay, so if I drew an imaginary line all the way down and out the tip of the nail, I want to consider this whole line of the finger, not just looking at it from here down. Okay, because when a client holds their hand out in front of their face, or when you hold your hand out in front of your face, you want to make sure that things look like they're straight, even if this part of my finger is crooked. Okay, so perfect example. If I look at the knuckle down here and I were to draw an imaginary line, my nail actually looks straight as it comes out my finger, even though my actual finger bows right here in the middle. And that's actually something that creates that optical illusion that we have straighter fingers and straighter nails than we actually do. So if you have a nail that doesn't necessarily twist side to side, but it twists this way, like let's say your nail is kind of crooked, and instead of it being perfectly straight, it kind of grows out of your finger like that. What we want to do is, if we are extending this nail, we're going to shorten this all down, get rid of as much of that effect from our actual natural anatomy. And when I actually extend this nail, I'm going to artificially extend this nail this way. Now, this is a obvious, major exaggeration, but some people's nails are so crooked that we actually have to really correct this so that their nail looks straight. And the placement of our forms, glue-on tips, even the full coverage extension kind of tips, any of that, if you've ever put them on crookedly, you'll notice that it really does make a big difference with the way that the overall nail looks. And the longer the nail, the more exaggerated that is going to look, okay? So from Tracy's video, it doesn't look like she's dealing with a lot of side-to-side crookedness. It looks like she's dealing with more twisting from underneath, okay? So in contrast, if we look at a nail this way, right? And here's our C curve. Ideally, again, we would want to have a symmetrical balance between the left and right sides. Now, in Tracy's case, I can see what she's talking about. Her nail kind of flares out a little bit, then it gets a little bit kind of flat. And then this side seems to protrude out just a little bit. And this is obviously extremely exaggerated, but it makes it easier for you guys to see. So to me, when I look at her nails this way, it looks like this inner corner of her middle finger or ring finger is protruding out a little bit. This one's kind of tucked in more, and then it's kind of this flatness. So this ends up looking like it's sticking out. This ends up looking like it's sticking in, and this ends up looking like it's sticking out. And this kind of in and out is what creates that spiraling, that twisting look. Whether we look at them this way or we look at them this way, we start to see that nail kind of twist from right to left or the other way around. So, Tracy, in your case, I have a couple recommendations. So, in this situation, I would actually add more product on this side, because you're not going to, if your natural nail on this side is actually, like, let's say this blackish color that I've just drawn with is your actual natural nail, then I can't really shave off this entire sidewall, because I'm going to be filing into the actual structure of the natural nail plate, and I don't want to be removing natural nail plate on that side, on that inside corner. So I'm limited as to what I can do on the side if it actually is natural nail that's doing that. The only thing I can really do is I can add product and I can subtract product, and I can subtract natural nail like length like this where it's not attached to any flesh. But I want to be very careful about what I'm removing when it comes to natural nail if it is attached to my nail bed. So I can add some product here to make this shape a little bit more uniform. That will match here. So I would keep the product extremely thin on this side. It needs to be, with hard gels, it needs to be like maybe a little bit thinner than a credit card, but basically credit card thickness, so like a nice bold line like that. Over here, I can make that a little bit more exaggerated on this outer side. And then on the top, I would probably just make this a nice kind of even dome that really just starts to cut down like that, okay? So this really kind of drops low. This actually gradually kind of goes out this way. And then I'm able to actually kind of encapsulate this curvature in here. So basically I end up adding here and just a teeny bit of a coating, maybe a little bit more on the top, just to kind of get rid of maybe that flat trapezoidal part. And nails like this are very, very normal and common. Ridging can also create these points where we have kind of corners in our natural nails, where even the natural nail itself, it'll be like flat, you know, and then kind of jut out and then kind of curve and then maybe drop down or tuck in or pull out this way. It's very, very common to have natural anatomy like that. And every fingernail is different, okay? So my pinky nails actually twist way more than any of my other fingers. This one is more of this issue where it kind of goes out my finger one way or the other. And also, like I said, the longer we make our nails, the more exaggerated this issue is going to be. So we want to look for symmetry. So I would actually recommend, Tracy, for you, I would actually recommend both things. I would recommend you shorten off your natural length, just like you would a ski jump nail, except your situation is not, it's growing up. Your situation is that it's curving from one side to the other. But removing the natural length is going to ultimately do away with a lot of that twisting, where your natural nail is kind of like going out on one side and then dipping in on the other, right? So if we remove all this, we're going to get back to the nail bed where the nail plate is attached to the nail bed. And so we're going to get rid of a lot of this being more exaggerated with that natural length. So I would actually shorten your nails way down. I would then re-extend them with product. And when we re-extend with product, here's where it gets a little tricky. So let me grab a couple nail forms here to show you what I mean. I'm just going to put my little sticker here. Okay. So when we close the nail form, we also have to take into account how we are going to correct any kind of curvature. So if we know, because we can't be, with really exaggerated crooked fingers, sometimes, like I've had clients where they had such bad ski jump nails that they could only go maybe 2 appointments and then I'd have to shorten their extensions down again and re-extend. So it is one of those things where if you have exaggerated natural anatomy anomalies, like curvature, twisting, anything, you aren't going to be able to get away with leaving that unless you're willing to let go of the fact that it twists. I mean, I don't think there's anything weird about nails that twist. And actually, some of the ladies that I know that actually grow their natural nails super duper duper long, like I'm talking like 20 inches long, their nails all twist and curve. And it's because of that keratin layer cellular structure in the protein of our actual nail plate that, you know, almost like a plant, it will twist as it grows out because of the way that the layers are being structured. So I don't think there's any reason to do more work than you're willing to do, but I understand also for the sake of wanting to learn how to fix this and also being really excited about having an additional skill, sometimes you're willing to put forth the effort to do all of this work. So it's totally up to you whether or not you feel like doing this level of work. There's nothing wrong with your nail twisting and being a little bit lopsided. And actually your nails aren't that lopsided from your video. I think it's just something that's bothering you because you stare at it all the time. So if we shorten this nail down and obviously, remove the corners, we want to ultimately have like a nice short nail that's prepped for a nail form application. So I would shave off the corners a little bit, kind of like a nice rounded short nail. And then I would apply my nail form. But when we apply our nail form, we have to keep in mind that we may not be able to get away with, depending on that natural nail, we may not be able to get away with just doing like a perfectly uniform nail form application where everything's perfectly lined up underneath. So as we're taught with nail forms, we're usually taught that, you have to have these tabs perfectly line up and this line needs to be perfectly in the center. And that's true in most cases. However, if we know that we are dealing with a natural nail that is even going to cause problems with our nail form placement, then what I can do is I can combat that even from the get-go and maybe even make my fix a little exaggerated so that by the time this nail grows out a month later, it's not as big of a problem as if I just made it perfectly straight. So what I can do is I can put the form underneath. Like I said, I could have the form be a little bit more bulky. So I can tuck the form in on this side and maybe even let the form kind of go this way a little bit just to be able to add a little bit more product over here. So if I kind of tuck the form in on this side and even have it come in and then this kind of goes that way, that will combat that twisting that it goes onto the inside of your finger. So you could even make your extension just ever so slightly crooked in comparison. If I'm just, again, I'm kind of like thinking about it like this way. If this starts to grow out, if I were to kind of offset from the beginning as I extend your nail, then as your nail twists and grows over the next 4 to 6 weeks, I have more time before it gets to a point where I have to shave it off again. So it depends on how exaggerated you want to go with that offset. But offsetting from the get-go when you form and structure and extend the nails for the first time, you can absolutely do like a complete, offset to whatever the natural anatomy is. And it might look a little bit crooked for the first week or so, but after about 2 or 3 weeks, that natural nail is going to start growing out. It's going to start twisting depending on how fast or how exaggerated that is. And then for the majority of that service or of that actual overlay or extension, you're going to be able to maintain that product without having to re-extend for a lot longer before you have to address that again. So that's an option too. You can completely offset in a more exaggerated way, or you can do everything perfectly symmetrical like this and just add more product so that your under C curve is perfectly straight. So you'd have like a perfect C curve underneath, and then you would just be adding more product on this side and not so much on this side so that you kind of combat that twisting again. But your C curve ultimately is going to start to look more twisted if you start with something that's perfectly symmetrical. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so you can also offset, twist your nail form, or even line up the tabs so that you're offsetting that twisting. So rather than lining up my tabs perfectly, I can think of my form from underneath, and I can even align my form in this way or that way so that even the C curvature under the nail and the shape of that is going to combat, any of this kind of issue where it's a little bit offset. Okay, so I can look at my nail form from the top and think about, okay, I want my pointer finger to look straight, so maybe I need to do a little bit this way or a little bit that way, depending on the bones of my finger, right? I might have to offset, because of the bones of my finger, I might have to offset this way or this way, but we can also think about it from the curvature underneath. Sometimes a perfectly symmetrical tabs lined up nail form isn't going to actually give us the look that we want because we need to offset some of that curvature in our natural nail by doing something like this, okay? So I think the reason why this starts to feel I think the reason why people start to get frustrated with these more advanced conversations like structural changes is because we are taught these hard and fast rules of how things are applied. And this is one of the bones I have to pick with education in our industry. And I understand people need to learn to walk before they can run. Don't get me wrong. However, I wish that people were always shown the big picture first. And then you go back. Even when I was in high school, I felt this way. I was like, show me the big concept first. And then show me, okay, here's what we're going to learn first, and then next, and then next, and then next, and then next, so that I can build the full picture that you showed me in the beginning. It's almost like seeing the puzzle picture on the box, knowing what you're going to make out of that puzzle, and then they give you the puzzle pieces and teach you how to put the puzzle together. I love that kind of education. But when you just give me puzzle pieces and you tell me this is the only way you can make this puzzle, but I don't even know what the end result is going to be, I don't even know what the picture is that I'm making, it'd be impossible to put a puzzle together without referencing the picture. So that's where I think this gets really frustrating, is that you're taught that, oh, your tabs on your nail form always have to line up, and your this always has to be this way, and your that always has to be this way. And, you know, we apply everything in super paper thin coats and da-da-da. So then you're thinking of like, oh, everything is so specific, I can't actually manipulate things using this as a material. I have to follow these hard and fast rules. So that's also what I'm covering in my gel overlay class, which is we need to strip away this idea when we're getting away from nail polish and just regular gel polish applications. We need to kind of strip away that idea of just applying thin coats of color, right? Because our whole motivation usually with any of those products is to add color to our nails. But once we graduate beyond that and we go, okay, how can I think of this more as I'm the sculptor and my material is my clay, right? How can I think about, I can add product here and I can scrape off product here and I can mold things differently in order to get the look and feel that I want. If we start thinking about being sculptors with clay and less of painting, then you're ultimately going to understand that any of these formulas of product, any of these viscosities, any of these nail forms or tools that we have at our disposal are nothing more than your sculpting tools, right? An e-file allows you to shave things off quickly. It's kind of like scraping tool, if you will. And so you can do that, but you can also apply product. You can add product and remove product. And the different formulas that we use for those purposes are specific because we need a product that can withstand that kind of adding and removing and manipulation and maintenance and all of those different things. And when we get into more advanced product, like hard gels, that is really the mentality that we need to have in our mind. So Tracy, I hope this fundamental kind of high-level answer helps you understand a little bit more about how I would address your particular nail. And it just really ultimately comes down to how much work do you want to put in to completely correct that natural anatomy that you have. I ultimately would probably feel like it once in a while, and then I'd probably let it ride for a while, especially since it's your non-dominant hand. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. Like you said, it's very time consuming to sculpt that, to get that perfect. And the one last thing I wanted to say before I kind of close this out is when we are looking at this curvature underneath, like let's say one side of your nail starts to dip down and the other one doesn't, and let's say we're needing to kind of maybe even think about from underneath, the other thing we can do when we're filing, I'm just going to bring in my little metal nail file I had before. When we're filing, if I line this up, I can also file underneath, right? So if I have like my sidewalls here, but I'm filing from underneath the nail, then I can also correct some of that underneath. Now, one sidewall might ultimately end up being shorter than the other. Like maybe it actually looks like that from underneath if I were to file it so it looks nice to me from the top. Maybe you're going to end up with one sidewall that's a little bit shorter, or this way, right? Depending on how it looks from the top. So I would also decide which one is more important to you. Is it more important that when you hold your hand out like this, your nail doesn't look like it's twisting to the right or left? Or is it more important to you that your nail looks straight from this angle? Optimally, we would like it to be both, which obviously you can do that with shortening your nail down, restructuring it, thinking about, you know, adjusting the way that you're even applying your C-curve and your product, thinking about your product application on the top and the thickness on one side versus the other. But if ultimately you're able to get the top smooth so that it looks uniform when you're looking at your nails, like even like this or like this, and underneath you're willing to sacrifice that uniformity or that symmetry of the C-curve, and you don't care if your sidewalls really line up, then you could also just do this too, where you kind of file from underneath to make it look straighter as that nail starts to twist. Okay, so this is also something you could do in between services where it might end up getting flatter of a C-curve on one side than the other, but from the top your nails look straight. And so, you know, at the end of the day, you don't really care about that. You'd rather prioritize your nails looking pretty from the top. So I hope that really helps you guys understand a little bit more about getting into this kind of structure part. And like I did on my lesson on Wednesday in our gel overlay course, talking about the structure and the anatomy of the nail and talking about how we create that architecture. We really are nail architects. I mean, we should honestly ditch the whole nail technician thing and get into, we are nail architects. Once we get into that advanced skill set, we truly are creating that overall structural idea and applying product in a way like sculpting, where we can add and remove product to get that result that we're looking for. Actually, nail architect would be a really, really great name. Somebody probably already has it. So anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope this video helped you understand this topic. Tracy, you are not alone with natural nail anomalies. I have several of them. My toes, don't even get me started. And yes, we can play all day and get really hyper focused on these things. And it is fun. It is fun to do this. It is fun to learn the skill of how to adjust those things, because it's a valuable skill as well as we work on others or even work on ourselves. But I want you guys to also understand that this is not an expectation that is put on you to have perfectly symmetrical nails all the time. I have been doing nails for 15 years on myself and a little bit less than that on other people. And there's a limit to how much energy I'm willing to put into certain things. And that limit also kind of goes hand in hand as we get to be service providers. There's also that limit that we kind of need to put on ourselves, which is, how much am I getting paid? How much time do I have? How much, effort does this really require? And kind of creating that idea of like where the lines cross. Where does it become diminishing returns? And where is it something that we should actually put forth that effort? And same thing goes for ourselves. Sometimes, spending that extra 4 hours on your non-dominant hand, really at the end of the day, are you going to feel that satisfied when you're done? Maybe, but I think you're going to just ultimately be exhausted and probably get worn out. So that's up for you guys all to decide for yourselves. But I do want to at least put that out there, that this is not something where if you can't do this on the regular, you're somehow less than when it comes to your nail care or your nail skills. That is absolutely not true, all right? So it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to learn the skill, which I think is very valuable, but then also decide whether or not you want to actually apply that knowledge regularly, or if you want to give yourself a break and just go, hey, this is my weird nail and I'm cool with it and I don't feel like working on it all the time. And I think that's totally, totally normal. All right. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys next week. And don't forget, we've got lessons posting every Wednesday inside of my gel overlay course. All are welcome. I highly recommend, if you haven't taken my level 1 course, my gel nail basics and chemistry course, if you haven't watched those videos, those are also here within the Nail Hub TV. Just scroll down to the bottom on the browse page. And then I have my level 2 that just started a couple weeks ago. So you guys are welcome to binge all of that level 1 again, refresh your memory. Dive into level 2 with gel overlays. I just talked about structure on Wednesday. And then nail audits are here for any of those troubleshooting issues. And I'm just really enjoying providing all of this content for you guys. All right. See you next time. Bye.